asked Will, I said, Will, he does it to me all the time. He pops up in the back and he just stands there till I stop. So can I just do it, give him a little of his own medicine, please? Hi, everybody. So welcome. I see a lot of familiar faces. As Salim just mentioned, I was a partner at Deloitte Consulting. I worked with Andrew Vaz, who's probably here right now. We led the kind of disruptive innovation practice, and then I decided to kind of refocus and repurpose my life. You guys are learning about a lot of things that's going to really affect your business. I'm with you. I was there. I said, you know what? I'm going to put business on the side for a second and try to go just do some save the world shit for a little bit. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 3 months, and I really am enjoying it. So XPRIZE is a nonprofit focused on using exponential technologies and gamification of innovation to crowdsource the wisdom of the world to solve grand challenges. As we've been discussing here, the disrupt yourself before you get disrupted. I usually like to call it Uber yourself before you get Kodaked. The notion of disruptive advantage versus competitive advantage, this is not just a soundbite or lip service, this is legitimate. There's real practicality in the fact that you can have a business strategy that doesn't do incrementalism of 10%, but actually go 10x. And if you look at some of your competitors who are not your traditional competitors, it's more the entrepreneurial community that's competing with you, they have no legacy, so they have the ability to do the leapfrog, the ability to do the 10x. And that's called moonshot thinking. The other thing that is talked a lot about, and I think it doesn't always hit home, but you got to really let it sink in for a second. I go around the world looking at innovation ecosystems, from Tel Aviv to Brooklyn to Silicon Valley to Santiago, Chile. And if you haven't done that, you should get out and explore a little bit, because there's an entrepreneurial renaissance occurring across the world right now. And the energy is significant. And you got to keep this in mind that, sure, there's been entrepreneurs in history. The difference is these entrepreneurs are walking around with more computer technology in their pocket than government or big business has ever had. And that is really changing the landscape of the world, if not alone business. These are the types of innovations and technologies that we've been discussing for the last day and a half. I'm going to focus less on the tech side and more on the organization process side. I will tell you that in my previous role as a management consultant, what the market is actually doing right now, what the market is buying, what all of you are actually moving forward with, is the stuff on the right. There's experimentation with cognitive analytics and advanced robotics and 3D printing and all that stuff. The stuff on the right is stuff that's ready for prime time. You can actually move forward with this and get competitive advantage. This was an article almost a year old now, but I like the article. I reference it. It was Workers on Tap, the Future of the Firm. And it talks about the fact that with all these freelance workers, with all these entrepreneurs that aren't going to work at big companies like a lot of the ones in the room, instead they're going to be entrepreneurs. They've got all the technology they need to create their own businesses. They can collaborate with anyone they want in the world via the internet and social media, so it's different. And it's going to dissolve firms. It's going to dissolve firms. Having a marketing department, if that's not your core business, may very well go away. Having a legal department, having a finance department, you're going to use the crowd for that, and there's reasons for it. It's because it can be faster, better, and cheaper. And I'll give you the kind of the hint of why. The smartest people in the world don't work for you. The smartest people in the world work somewhere in the crowd. So you're going to start to figure that out and figure out that you can crowdsource them, incentivize them. You're going to start to use them. Crowdsourcing is getting anyone, anywhere, anytime, and at scale. This is the other important thing. Think about your strategy. Is there any IT executives in here? Okay. How are you going to train your technology people to do AI, robotics, 3D, all this new tech? And you don't know if it's going to go VHS or Betamax yet. Right, that analogy. And it's going to be very agile, and it's always going to be changing. So what are you going to you're going to hire people, train them, and then fire them as soon as it goes from VHS to Betamax? You're not going to be able to do that. You have to rely on scale to become an exponential organization, to scale up and scale down on demand. And you're going to do that through crowd. You're not going to do that with temporary labor. You're going to do that through the crowd. It can be very simple things, complex things, or very open-ended things that you can use the crowd for. The reason why 2016 is a different point in human history and why crowdsourcing is coming into its own. XPRIZE was established 20 years ago. So they've been doing crowdsourcing for a long time to solve grand challenges. But it's a big deal now. It's actually why I decided to go work with XPRIZE, because right now, crowdsourcing is coming into its prime, because you've got cloud computing, mobile technology, and connectivity, social networking that's connecting everyone. You know, you think that, I've got 2 kids, one that just graduated college, one that's in college, and they don't do work with people anymore face to face. All the work they do and all the collaboration they do is via social networking. So they're getting wired to do collaboration with not having someone physically there. And for me, that's still, there was an adjustment period to get to that point, right? And you kind of know everybody in the crowd. My son uses, well, I'll talk about this story later if Salim doesn't give me the hook. Another thing that's happening is the crowd coming from the millennial generation is significant because of their wired, like my 2 kids. And right now, the largest portion of the workforce in the US are millennials. For the first time, it's the largest portion of the workforce. They are wired differently. When my daughter graduated college, she's like, Dad, I'm going to look for a job and stuff. I'm like, don't go do the traditional route of going and hiring for jobs and competing against thousands of people for the same job. Go on the internet, do a Google search for environmental science, oceans, crowdsourcing, because she studied environmental science, oceans. Sure enough, she got a list of all these crowdsourcing sites of someone in the world that was looking for the knowledge in her head for just the 30 minutes to an hour or 2 hours to deliver something for them. And she was immediately making revenue, which is good. I got to get her off the allowance. She was immediately making revenue. And then she could flip that, and she could actually go out and crowdfund and get money for research projects. She actually found an individual, a 19-year-old, that got a lot of media attention, a 19-year-old that raised $2 million to do an ocean science crowdfunding campaign. So it was one of her peers. My daughter's never going to work for a company after having that experience. Now, I did hire her at XPRIZE, just for full disclosure. Here's the other kicker. The crowd is getting bigger. This is the dot matrix version of the crowd. We're about to go to the laser printer version. Today, there's about 3 billion people that are connected to the internet. With its normal organic evolution, you're going to have 3 billion more people within the next 4 years that get on the internet. And if you look at what Astro Teller is doing with the Google X program, or now X with the Google Loon, or what Mark Zuckerberg's doing with the Facebook drone project, or Elon Musk with satellites, or Richard Branson, they're all doing initiatives. We should expect that within the next decade, the planet will have free Wi-Fi. We have Astro Teller come out to a program that Singularity University, XPRIZE, and Deloitte does, and he tells the group, yes, I just got Sri Lanka as a country on Wi-Fi, and I plan to do this throughout the world, especially in developing countries. So you've got a whole world, that's a big crowd. That's 8 billion people within 10 years. And keep in mind, that's 8 more doublings, or that's 10 years of doubling power of computing. So supercomputers going to super duper computers, that's a technical term, super duper computers at the same time being connected to everybody in the world. That's a big deal. That's a different planet that we're going to live on. And the crowd, you're going to tap into that. Crowd can be your external crowds. It can be consumers, communities of interest, affinity groups, the general population. Also, people that work in your organization are also in the crowd. Make no mistake about it. If you've got 10,000 employees, 20,000 employees, 50,000 employees, especially in the finance community, I guarantee nights and weekends, and maybe a little bit during some office time or lunch breaks, they're getting on crowd sites and they're making money in the crowd. And you should recognize that, and don't try to put up an HR policy that limits it, because you're going to scare those people away. The crowd is sophisticated. As a matter of fact, what we're starting to find out is that if you're one of the most talented people in your field, you're not going to work for any company. You're definitely going to work for the crowd because it's more lucrative. If I graduated from Stanford and I'm like one of the best coders in my class, I'm not going to go work for Google or for Facebook or for any other company. I'm going to go work in the crowd. Why? Because I'm going to go into these sites that are competition-based, and I'm going to clean house. I'm going to run the house. I'm going to win all of them, and I'm going to make 7 figures, and that's happening. I know some of these individuals. They're that good, they're going to go in the crowd because they can print money there. You have crowdsourcing as a superior model. I mentioned this before. The smartest people in the world don't work for you. Can we all agree with that? I mean, they don't work in your department, they don't work in your government institution, they don't work in your school, they don't work in your firm. They work somewhere in the crowd. You can't think that among the 7 billion plus people on the planet, you've got a monopoly on all the smartest people or the most creative people. So what you need to do, you don't want to put yourself in a smartness contest with everybody in the world because you'll lose. Does that make sense? If you start to compete against a firm that starts to adopt the crowd religiously, you will lose over time. Pure economics will show you that. They're going to tap into more smarter people as you've just continue to use the brains that are in the box that you have. The other thing that you've got to do is you've got to get the needle in the haystack to come to you. So granted, the smartest people in the world don't work in my company, they work somewhere else, but okay, but why are they going to do my work? Why are they going to help me out? What can I do to incentivize them? We did a study, Biology here and I did it as well, from Deloitte. We did a study on what are the incentives that gets people in the crowd to do your work for you. Well, one obvious incentive is you pay them. And you don't have to pay them as much, but you can pay them. Other models, though, is you can make it really convenient. Good example is convenience, and I use this example. A lot of you probably have heard of gig walk by now. GigWalk is an app that if I open it up right now in New York City, it'll actually give me this prompt here that shows me these pin drops around me right now where I can go make $4. If I click on those, it's things like walk into the store and take a picture of the shelf of the Frosted Flakes cereal box, or go into this Home Depot and count the inventory in this bin, or go to this restaurant and take a picture of the menu, or go into this restaurant and take a photo of the drive-through. You can crowdsource people to do that. And because my daughter was using this in college, she'd be going into Trader Joe's, and it would prompt her and say, you're in Trader Joe's. We see that you're in there. By the way, if you take a picture of the soda aisle, we'll give you $4 in your PayPal account immediately. It's just convenient. So that's how the crowd's being used. It could be fun. There's a researcher in the UK that had no money to do the research, had some cells that had cancer cells that had to have some analysis to see if there's anomalies in the cell. And she had a coder on her team create a first-person shooter game, put it on the web, and went viral, and she processed over 2 million images of tumor samples for free because she gamified it. She made it fun. People thought they were playing a game. They identified for them where there was anomalies in the cell. It's credibility and ego. There's sites like Kaggle and others that they publish their leaderboards. XPRIZE does this. You win a grand XPRIZE, it's like winning a Nobel Peace Prize for the STEM community. People will do it even if they don't think they're going to win the money, just to be recognized in that community on the leaderboard. And then you have passion and sense of community. Gordon Levitt has come to our programs at SU, XPRIZE, and Deloitte where he's talked about this community. I don't know if you've seen that. He's won Emmys for this program where he crowdsources the whole 30-minute commercial, 30-minute television episode. And people do it because they're passionate. They get their name on the credits. And then, of course, competitive spirit. XPRIZE tries to use all of these. If you look at the XPRIZE model, it's economies of scale. Peter Diamandis launched the first XPRIZE, the Ansari XPRIZE. He offered $10 million. Out of the teams that competed collectively, they spent $100 million or more to win the $10 million prize. And it got all these shots on goal. Rapid experimentation through a variety of lenses. Didn't care what your resume said, what your background was, what your bio, your age. If you can do this, you win. And that model worked. He crowdsourced, and it launched the whole private space industry, which is now a $2 billion plus space industry. And that uses all those principles. Today, we're working on a few different XPRIZes. Elon Musk, who's on our board of trustees, is one of the backers behind the Global Learning XPRIZE. I was just in Washington, D.C. this morning with Barbara Bush, 91 years old. It's her birthday today, the Adult Literacy XPRIZE. The notion here is if government is incapable of solving X, big business doesn't have a profit motive to solve X, but it has to be solved. XPRIZE is going to solve it because we're going to solve it. We're going to crowdsource the world to solve it. That's the model. So there's a lot of ways this can be used. What I'm going to share with you for this kind of next section is I'm going to talk about, especially for this community, because a lot of you are investors, a lot of you think through an investment lens. I'm going to share with you a little bit of the playbook of why the Ubers and the Airbnb models are so successful and what you should be looking for from an investment standpoint in terms of when you really break down those models. What's happening here is you've got crowdsourcing, but you also have the sharing economy and excess capacity. Excess capacity is things in our world that are now in excess. They're a byproduct of other things we're doing, or they're excess capacity. Good example is, how many of you have a couch in your house that you haven't really sat on in at least a year? How many of you have a bedroom in your house now that your kids are off to school or something? How many of you have a car that you don't drive 24 hours, 7 days a week? Okay, this is excess capacity for us. This is idle capacity. That excess capacity can put into the sharing economy. And then it can be crowdsourced. Supply and demand is put together through a crowdsource app. And that creates a trifecta. That creates unicorn. That's Uber, Airbnb, and anyone want to admit they use the poor man's version of Airbnb, crowdsurfer.com? No? Only my son uses that? I told my son, I said, you can't go to a stranger's house and use their couch. He's like, Dad, I Googled the guy. You're like 3 degrees removed from him on LinkedIn. He's no stranger. It's like, okay, that's a good point. I'll buy that. So you see the model? So there's a lot of things that are excess capacity. I used to live in Chicago. I had this great property in Lincoln Park. Every day I took my car, drove off to Oak Brook. The parking spot sat there all day. Sure enough, anything excess capacity out there is a startup focused on it. Sure enough, there's a startup that's working on basically pimping out your parking spot. You drive up, you say, how much would you pay for a parking spot? I say, I'll pay $5. I'm running late for work. I'll pay $15 for a parking spot. Someone in the building gets an alert saying, you want to auction off your parking spot right now for 15 bucks? Yes. They connect supply and demand. It's excess capacity. This guy actually was doing it with public spaces in San Francisco, and then they sued the city sued him, and he had to leave. So that's true. He's now in Santa Monica. He moved down to Santa Monica. There's excess capacity in traffic. What's excess capacity in traffic? The data on your phone is just sitting there. Well, who used that? Who put that into the sharing economy? Waze did, right? Waze took Uri Levine, who I met with in Israel a few months ago. It's right out of his playbook. Excess capacity, data on your phone that nobody's using. I figured out a way to put it in the sharing economy called crowd trafficking. Used a crowd trafficking app to tie everybody together, and he created a model off of it. So the question you got to ask yourself, or if you're investing in companies, and a lot of you do portfolio investments for your clients, anywhere that you have a company that has excess capacity, that could be your consumer's excess capacity, is probably a stock price that should be dropping because they're going to get Ubered, right? How many people have clothes in their closet they don't wear very often? A lot of clothes in their closet you don't wear often. That's excess capacity. Now, make no mistake about it. There are people working on apps to take technology to easily figure out how to scan yourself, how to document it using artificial intelligence to figure out machine vision, to figure out what's in your closet, et cetera, what styles, and connect you with someone else in the neighborhood so you have sharemycloset.com. So if you're in the process of making physical clothing, jewelry, shoes, et cetera, or selling it at retail, you have an issue. You have an Uber moment that is brewing. The Internet of Things is going to enable things because you're going to have small devices and sensors that you can put into things. How many of you have a lawnmower? I'm a Midwest guy, so I had no lawns in LA, but there's lawns in the Midwest. So I use my lawnmower one day out of the month. Why does everybody in the neighborhood have a lawnmower? It's ridiculous. With Internet of Things, I'm going to be able to put a device on there so that you can't take my lawnmower and run off with it. I know where it is. And then we're going to start sharing it. And there's going to be apps that allow us to share this stuff. A lot of this stuff's in my garage. I don't even know what it is anymore. I bought it at one point thinking I needed it. There's a lot of excess capacity. This must be Slim Slide, because I see Viagra in there too. I don't know what that's about. So he'll come out now. He's going to come out a few minutes early. I forgot that was in there. So what's the sharing about that? Yeah, there's no excess capacity of that, right? So you got it's like you eat those. So you have a situation where you have excess capacity that will be absorbed. As economies get tougher and as technological unemployment takes over, people will look for different types of jobs and people will start to share more because it just makes sense. A lot of excess capacity, right? You also have to keep in mind you've got excess capacity in industrial equipment. Same thing, a lot of excess capacity there, right? Caterpillar, you see now, is starting to get into the space. Perfect move. This does apply not only to cognitive excess capacity, but also, not just physical products, but also cognitive excess capacity. All of you have intelligence and intellectual property that is excess capacity that you're not using on nights and weekends, and you can go use that somewhere else. You can compete on an XPRIZE with that intellectual property. It's excess capacity. So there's cognitive excess capacity. There are people that are Google engineers by day or Deloitte consultants by day or finance analysts by day that on nights and weekends decide to go compete on Kaggle. It's excess capacity. That's what they like to do. Same thing with developers, with the top coder model, right? Top coder's got, I think, what is it, Balaji, 700,000? Top coder has 700,000 developers. Those aren't mutually exclusive from your employees, right? Those are your employees just working in the crowd economy. This is a good example. This is Jane. She's in Hollywood. She's unemployed. She's an actress. She waits tables. Her excess capacity is nights and weekends. She does some film work. She likes to get with her buddies. Like I live in Hollywood now in Los Angeles, and that's what people do in Hollywood on the weekends. They like to go make production and create content and get real creative, right? And what Tongle did was Tongle said, we know there's all these people out there doing it anyways. Why don't we make it a competition and give them some content to use? So a few years back, Colgate-Palmolive, with the Speed Stick brand, did a Tongle competition. And Tongle had 70,000 creative people. And Colgate-Palmolive said, I only got $27,000. I can't do anything with that. I can't make a big consumer product commercial with that. They put it out to the Tongle community. Sure enough, the teams competed. They presented back to Colgate-Palmolive, here's 4 or 5 potential winners. Colgate-Palmolive picked one. It was pretty good. It ended up being their Super Bowl ad in 2012 for $17,000. Is that any surprise? Do the smartest people work do the most creative people work in your advertising agency? That doesn't even make sense to me. They're somewhere out in the crowd. Go crowdsource that creative genius. You've got the same thing happening with medical doctors, legal, Everywhere you go, you see crowdsourcing being used. So I am actually out of time, and Slim, the first time ever, Slim didn't have to come up on stage and yank me off. So thank you, everybody, for the time.